Hello everyone. Thank you for attending today's Watershed webinar, Weed Warriors of Fort Roberdeau. Our presenters are environmental educators, Miss Helen Sinal and Miss Jody Wallace.
Good afternoon. My name is Jean Sinal. I'm a retired science teacher from Hollidaysburg Area School District, and this is...
My name is Jody Wallace, known in this neck of the woods as the Creature Teacher, and I am also the General of the Armies of Weed Warriors at Fort Roberdeau.
Okay, Jane. All right. We wanted to review briefly what we did last week. So last week we talked about the watershed that we're in, the Susquehanna watershed. We showed you the Google Map search for Fort Roberdeau, how we utilize that Google map to work with measurement within the site. We used the art of Robert Griffin to talk about old growth forests at the time Fort Roberdeau was in use. You had an opportunity to learn briefly about a historic landscape restoration that the Weed Warrior Project is involved in. And Jody talked a bit about how carbon sequestration in trees affect climate change and work to mitigate the effects of climate change. And there's a whole lot more you can do in the classroom under the resources for teachers. This is one of the links. It's also included at the end of today's presentation. Okay.
So another reason to do this is to increase biodiversity and as well as restore the historic landscape and to mitigate climate change. So why do this? There are some good reasons. Practical considerations before you even do the field trip. Boring, but important. Permission from the landowner. Well, yeah, whether it be a municipal entity, a city, a park, you need to get permission from the landowner, because you don't want to get there with 40 kids and like have somebody come out and say, what are you doing here? So anyway, that's number one. Number two is, under boring but important, is Pennsylvania One call. And this is a call that you make to the electric entities, powers would be, in order to make sure that you're not digging in an area where there's underground electricity. That would be terrible, to put your shovel into a live electric wire. So these folks, and it's not that hard, you just make the call and they come out very promptly, and they might even give you a swell change purse like they gave me. So important practical consideration. The other is money. Jean's going to talk about money.
Okay. It depends on your local school district. I know Hollidaysburg Area School District does have a foundation that you can write a grant for, and you can be provided with funds for activities in the classroom. Also, MIWI grants, NOAA grants, the Arbor Day Foundation has grants available. DCNR has grants available every year. They open it up to different organizations, school districts included, to write a really comprehensive grant. If you want to have your students doing a more complex project, okay? And also, maintenance. What are you going to be able to do for the site once you've done the initial removal of invasive species and replanted with native trees and shrubs? How are you going to provide for maintenance to the site? So those are some considerations you want to think about before you begin your field trip or your field experience. Now, there's an
Let me just add a little bit to that. Mowing, if you can say it's on a city site or a school site, we have gotten people to just mow around these new trees. You can repeatedly go to the same site and yank up the privets or whatever invasives that you have growing there, and repeatedly weed and weed and weed. You can get a lot of mileage from one site. So we've done this before too, where students come to the same site They weed out what's come up and then plant new and remove the dead plants that you planted the year before. One thing not to do is pesticides. This is a no, unless you have a licensed pesticide applicator on your team. I myself have a general pesticide license, but when I looked into getting the licenses for schools and parks, the insurance was incredibly high. So I didn't do it, but there are people out there that can safely apply and legally apply pesticides, but you have to find them. Anyway, so that, I guess, yeah, that, and oh, the other thing is you have to come back in a few years after you've done your planting to remove the tubes and the stakes, and we'll get to that later. So Jean, back to you.
Yes. And also, this is a long-term project that Hollidaysburg in the past has worked with. We worked with Jody in the Blair County Conservation District to do the ring gardens at the YMCA and likewise at Fort Roberdeau. Now, where can you get your trees and shrubs? All right, so we take a look here. Keystone Partnership. Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership. The website is provided for you, is a site where you would be able to obtain native trees and shrubs for your replanting. Likewise, the Arbor Day Foundation, you can get native plants there, trees and shrubs. With Arbor Day Foundation, you have to purchase those. So that might be a little bit prohibitive for your school programming. But there are a wide variety of sites there where you would be able to utilize those for providing native species for your project.
Oh, just real quick, another source of trees is commercial trees. This is a catalog from a commercial grower. They're not as expensive as you might think for the little bitty ones. All right, I'm done.
All right. Before you take your students into the field, it's important for you to realize that they need to be attired appropriately. They need to have clothing that's going to keep them safe and allow them to be working functionally in the field. Okay, so if you take a look here, we've got Jody. All right, and these are things you need to go over with your kids. We recommend that they wear a hat to protect from the branches on the site. Also, we're layered. We've got a long sleeve shirt. Okay.
I have one.
Yes, long sleeve shirt. We want you to make sure that you utilize sunscreen and also insect repellent. She's layered. She's got a long sleeve shirt, a vest, and an over. All right. Okay. And a jacket to wear. All right. This is another thing they need to be encouraged to wear. Before they even think about going on a field trip, they need to wear sturdy shoes. No flip-flops, no sandals, because they're going to be in the field. You have uneven surfaces. You've got all kinds of plants, shrubs. So sturdy shoes, by all means. Also, long leg plants, okay? Pants, blue jeans, this is important, and long socks to go up over the bottom of your pants.
I am making a fashion statement.
Yes, you are.
Okay. If we all look goofy together, it's okay.
Right. And this helps in prevention from ticks.
And if you just spray your shoes, it's 70% as effective as spraying the whole body. So if you just put it on your shoes, and then I get my hat too, it's pretty effective. And oh, let me get my leg up here.
Okay.
Light colored clothing makes ticks more easy to see. So I got my faded blue jeans and my orange raincoat. Also raincoats, if it's going to rain, wear a raincoat. And as Jean says, layers are important. If you are thinking of going to Fort Roberdeau for this field trip, we do supply very cheap, ill-fitting gloves. So I recommend that if your kids have them, to bring gloves from their house.
Yes,
Laser ones.
basically work gloves though.
Let me have my glove back.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay.
Not winter gloves or mittens. We're talking about work gloves from whenever we're on site.
If you're working in an urban site, around traffic, wear a safety vest. I'm done.
All right. Okay, so you can see here, there are several things that you want to make sure the kids understand before they even go on the field trip. And when they get on the bus, you may want to check to make sure that they do have long sleeves, long pants, the whole 9 yards. It really is disruptive, and it makes it difficult for the teachers if you have students that show up at the site and they're not appropriately attired. Also, water bottles and with their name on it, they could bring water bottles along, but no cell phones or purses or dangly jewelry, because you can get hung up in trees and shrubs and get caught.
What do you think of these? This too dangling?
Yeah. Kind of, yes. All right. So those are important considerations before you take students into the field to do field work. Now, one thing we want to talk about before we even get them into the field are ticks. Pennsylvania, unfortunately, has a very high incidence of ticks. Okay, and more so this year. I know our veterinarian has talked about this past year was one of the worst tick seasons she's seen on cats and dogs that came into her practice. Some of the things you need to be concerned about are ticks. That's why we're talking about DEET or insect repellent, and also doing the tick check. Ticks can cause Lyme disease and several other types of illnesses. So what we want to make sure is the kids are set up for that and ready to go. Now, we have provided for you a link for you to be able to get this, this handout, and it's put out by, I can't remember, the Palmy organization through, this is a handout too that was done, I think, by Penn State University, the Ag Extension Service. But this gives you all the information that you want to go over with your students in school before they go into the field. Also, make sure you check with your nurse, school nurse, get all the information you need on the students that are going on the field trip in case you need to have inhalers or whatever. Also, make sure that you let the nurse know that you've gone over this information. Before you go out of doors, potential tick habitats, after you come back from the field work, to also to do the tick check itself. Okay, and one thing you might want to remember is ticks love warm spaces. So tick check behind the ears. Okay, you can find them there also sometimes at the nape of the neck. The axillary regions, your armpits, in the groin area, and also between your toes. So you want to make sure the kids are aware of all of that. So when they come back and they go home, they can do the tick check to make sure that they're in good shape. Okay, this diagram is provided for you. The ticks that we need to be worried about in terms of in the field most often are the deer ticks. Ixodes damoni is the genus and species that we're talking about. This illustration shows you the deer tick, the lone star tick, and the dog tick. We're not going to go into a great deal of detail with that, but you need to remember that there are 4 commonly found ticks in Pennsylvania: the black-legged deer tick, the American dog tick, the groundhog tick, and the lone star tick. The 2 we see most often in the field, like at Fort Roberdeau, at Canoe Creek, and also around this the Hollidaysburg School District, junior high, C.W. Longer, are mainly the ones we're concerned about are the black-legged deer tick. Okay, so you have this information provided for you.
And
You need
they're teeny weeny. They look like a freckle, just really small.
So those are important things to talk about, but that can be done in the classroom before you go into the field. So now we want to talk about Jody. One of the first things we do when the students arrive at the site, we go over the safety talk with the equipment.
All right, troops. And I find it really fun to take a military bearing because the kids really listen to you. So troops, line up as you see in the picture, and we're going to talk about safety equipment. Gloves. Wear your gloves all the time. That's really important so you don't chop off fingers and things like that. Let's talk about shovels. So one thing not to do is carry your shovel like most people want to carry the shovel, and that's over the shoulder. Jean, you want to step into the picture here?
I can do that.
Hi ho, it's off to work we go. This actually happened with my own daughter. Daughter number 1 threw a shovel over her shoulder and bonked daughter number 2 right above her eye. Emergency room. This stuff happens, so don't have them not carry the shovel that way. Also, shovels can be tripping hazards, like doo, 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 and then you trip over the shovel. And also there's going to be downed privet everywhere. You can trip over branches and down privet and over the stumps that the privet cutters leave behind. So if you take life really slowly and watch what you're doing with your feet, less tripping hazards. So shovels. Oh, and another thing, to wear the gloves. Kids get really excited if you have a team with one's digging the hole and one's planting. The planter always wants to get their fingers down in the hole to plant that tree. And like the shoveler is still there. No, you don't want to do that. So watch that your students don't get their fingers around these shovels. Okay, and loppers and saws, they're sharp. Loppers, you can only imagine how that can cut off a finger. So loppers are used to cut the privet. Oh, where's my privet? Never mind, you'll get the picture. And these things could cut your fingers right off, and saws, of course, are sharp. So let's see mallets. We'll get to this in a minute, but the mallet is used to hammer in the stake to put the tree shelter up. This makes me the most nervous, to tell you the truth. If you allow students to use the mallet, I make them wear a hard hat if they're going to be doing that. Also, if you've got smaller, like junior high students, they might just be too small to do this, unless you've got really, really, really good adult supervision. So anyway, as you can see, you might bonk yourself in the head, or the hammerer might miss and hit the person holding the stake in the arm. So anyway, get good adult supervision, number 1, or just, wait until all the students come home to tube and shelter the trees if you have really small students doing this. One thing that I like to do ahead of time, like at Fort Roberdeau, there's humongous privet, is I will go in with a crew of adults ahead of time. I don't like to use power tools with students around, but vroom, 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 you can get an awful lot of privet knocked down with a little chainsaw like this. And then the students can simply haul it out. So there you go. I guess I'm done with equipment. There you go, Jean.
Okay. Also, we talk about when you get into the field, some of the wildlife they might see at Fort Roberdeau. They may come into contact with small snakes or snakes. This is an eastern milk snake, captively bred. But we talk about, if you find a living thing, box turtle, wood turtle, possible live things at the site at Fort Roberdeau, or small snakes like this. This is a young milk snake. It gets much bigger than this. Black snake, garter snake. Living things, let them be. Okay, living things, let them be. The kids have loppers and shovels and other instruments, and they need to be reminded these animals live there. They should be left alone to their own, in their own environment. So living things, let them be. Actually, snakes will get away from you. They do not, unless you corner them. So they're not really major problems. Okay, so, and also you might, in some sites, you might actually end up seeing some ground yellow jackets. But
Right.
we just need to make sure that the kids, are aware of stuff like that. But if you have, my favorite thing is to have a ratio of one adult, one teacher, one adult to 10 to 15 kids.
Maybe even
In small,
more,
maybe
yeah.
even smaller student teacher ratio.
And if
So
you
you have
do-
more control
If you
over
do
them.
come across like ground nesting bees, just leave.
Yeah, have the students move out of the area.
Yeah, when you start pounding around, that's when you tick them off. Well, I shouldn't say tick them off.
Tick them off.
It makes them angry, and that's when people get stung. So
Yeah.
just leave. Go ahead, Jean.
Also, a real quick thing. This is an ID sheet for poison ivy. Most sites, like I know there's poison ivy along the trail between CW Longer and the high school, and also the Ho Chi Minh Trail there. There's poison ivy there. Over at CW Longer, where in the area where the purple loosestrife is located, there is some poison ivy there as well. We've provided a fact sheet for you, leaves of 3, let it be, and just make the kids aware of that. You can actually have not only the plant, but you can have it in the form of a brown vine, climbing vine, even in the wintertime, interestingly enough, it looks like a brown vine up. You can still, if you handle it, you can still get poison ivy and also shrub-like. So this is a handout provided for you in this packet so you can be more aware, site aware when you go into the field. Okay.
So those are some things to think about even before you get to the site. And you're finally at the site and you are now a weed warrior. So look at these kids in this photo. Don't they look like they're intense and having fun? They are weed warriors. Look at this girl. She's properly dressed with her socks and her gloves. Okay, so they are ready to attack. So removing privet, you can dig it up, depending on how big it is. You can pull it out. So we have a chain apparatus that we can, I guess I should point to this. Yeah, chain that we can use. And then there's loppers that we can cut it. Of course, it grows back. So you have to do this again and again. And if you saw the privet I brought last time, that big thing had berries all over the place. All those berries fall down and make new little baby privets. And you can very, very easily, I dug this one out yesterday, just like they're easily pulled out. And what you want to do there is hang them upside down. And then they dry out and they're all dead and they will never grow again. However, if you just throw the branches on the ground, there's an opportunity for them to resprout. At Fort Roberdeau, we pile the privets into one gigantic brush pile, and that's a pretty good habitat for rabbits and other wildlife. So, what's next? Oh, some more photos.
And identification.
Okay, identification of privet. I know you can't really see this, but this is a young privet. It's already starting to sprout. It's one of the first things to get green, and it's one of the last things to let go of its leaves. Jean had a fact sheet last time, and I think that's in our references on identify. Oh, there we go. That's better. identifying invasive species. So, and it is important to identify your invasive before you start yanking things up. So, want to show the next one, Jean? Sure.
Okay. So
Yeah, you can see the wall of privet that we're
right
battling in Fort Roberdeau. And yeah, show the next one.
Okay.
And we'll, of course, go over this on the site as to what it looks like as a live plant. Okie dokie.
So planting a native species. Let's take a look. Let's take a look at a quick video on how to plant.
There, that was a cool little 1-minute video. It says it better than I could ever say it. So soaking the trees, you need buckets. And if you're getting your trees from 10 Million Tree Pot Project, they already have been soaked in this root gel solution. It's like this powdery stuff you put in water and you stir it up and it looks like really, really runny jello. But this root gel solution, this gel really protects the roots against drought. So if you're getting bare root, important to soak them in root gel if you can. And this stuff isn't expensive. It's like $2 ahead of time. Makes 5 gallons too. Anyway, and if you're getting them as containerized trees, they'll come in a container like this. I'm sorry, I don't have a real tree. We haven't gotten them yet. And sometimes when they're containerized like this, the roots are really, really, really packed in there. And so you can't even get them out. You got to turn this thing upside down and then you squeeze and then you squeeze and then you poke your fingers in the little hole. And then eventually the little tree comes out of its container. And then you gotta rip, it sounds rough, I know. Rip those roots apart and kind of spread them out before the tree is planted. So after you plant your tree, then you have to shelter it. Now there's many ways that you can do that. Way number one is you can tube them. So these tree tubes, it comes in big and little. You put this carefully over your already planted tree. And then, Jean, can you hold that for me?
I sure can.
And then you stake it. So you put the stake in between these little zip ties and then, and then you label it. And this is one that we're going to be planting. We're going to be planting elderberry at Fort Roberdeau with a school group on Earth Day. And then you stake it. Hard hat if possible, really, really good gloves. Adult or an adult supervisor, very important as you pound that stake in. And I can't resist singing Bang Bang Maxwell's Silver Hammer when I do this. Anyway, stake it until it's nice and firm in the soil. And this will protect that little tree from all kinds of critters that want to eat that little bitty baby tree. Deer, rabbits, even mice. So you got to seat this well into the ground. And in the case of Fort Roberdeau, if you're using these tall tubes, we have to put a net over the top of them so bluebirds don't nest, try and nest in there and get caught and die in there. So you can tube it, or you can cage it. These green, this is what we use a lot at Fort Roberdeau because it's a historic site. Lots of people think those tubes are unattractive. I don't know what they're talking about, but anyway, a cage will work, and it will also enable that little tree to be exposed to wind, and that little trunk grows big and strong inside a cage while being protected against at least deer. Or this is really nasty stuff and has to be reapplied, you can get this nice dried blood that's really, really stinky. And if you use this, you gotta take a really long shower afterwards because it just somehow always gets on you. So it's available in different, I just happen to have this brand, but comes in many different brands. It's not real expensive and you can do a whole lot of trees, but in about 3 months, you have to reapply it. So anyway, stinky dried blood is another way to protect those trees. All right. Ooh, go ahead, Jean, environmental education.
Here we go. Okay, so there's Jody and environmental education. When we have 3 to 4 rotation stations when we take students into the field at Fort Roberdeau. One of the stations is removal of privet. Another station is planting native species. A third station here is the food web game, talking about the interrelationships of the plants and the animals in the ecosystem. And Jody has an example here. If you notice, we also have an active link for you to get the lesson plan for that.
So this is part of the environmental education station, and it is one of my favorite environmental education activities to do. So if you can you get that on the floor, Jean?
Yes. We have 10 minutes.
Excuse our buffoonery there, TV brand. Okay, so if you can imagine these cards. Got it? Okay. These cards with a picture of an animal that you can, okay, there we go. These cards that you can imagine live at that site. Like you can even have your students research that habitat. What kind of animals live in that habitat? And at Fort Roberdeau, there's an extensive bluebird trail. So we got bluebirds. And on the back of the card, it tells.
Show it to the computer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, it shows what the animal eats, and in the case of the bluebird, insects, including great spangled fritillary butterfly, mason bees, and different. The bluebird also eats different kinds of berries, and what the bluebird is eaten by, like the black snake, a raccoon, foxes eat bluebirds. So we got many animals that live at Fort Roberdeau, including mature hackberry trees are growing in that site. Unfortunately, the hackberry can't have babies because the whole thing is covered in privet. So one of the battle cries of the students is free the hackberries. So, and the hackberry is, the berries are eaten by bluebird, and the morning cloak butterfly, it's the host plant for its caterpillar, and also raccoon and squirrels and fox eat the berries of the hackberry. So we have mice, sharp-shinned hawk can be found at Fort Roberdeau. Jean, can you show all these animals? Can you pick that up? I can't see the pictures.
Okay. I think we're 5, 6 minutes.
Okay. Are we? Can you see it, Mike? Oh, you can. Okay.
Okay.
Sort of. Yeah. Yeah. You
Okay.
gotta be able to see the floor.
Okay.
There we go. Can you read the cards on the floor? All right. So this is the food web game. Let's start with a very simple food chain. This is red twig dogwood that we planted in the first army of Greek warriors. Where did this red twig dogwood? Well, believe it or not, this little mouse will eat the berries of the red twig dogwood. What will eat the mouse? Oh, where's the snake? Snakes love mice. All right, and what will eat what will eat the snake? Well, believe it or not, a raccoon will eat a baby snake anyway. Raccoons also like to eat insects occasionally, like this morning cloak butterfly. Not the favorite, I would imagine, but this bluebird would certainly eat the morning cloak butterfly. Oh, you know what? Let's do something else. The morning cloak butterfly will eat the hackberry as a caterpillar. Yeah. And then the bluebird eats the berries off the hackberry, and Mr. Sharpshin would eat the bluebird. So you can go on and on and on with this as this ginormous food web with 50 kids, with 50 different organisms that are living right there at the site. But what's one thing that's not taking part in this community? It's privet, walls of privet. So when privet takes over the habitat of plants, let's say no more red twigs can grow and no more hackberries can grow, it destroys the entire web. So
Yeah, privet takes out habitat. It also takes out the food and it takes out food and shelter for the native plants and the native animals that live there.
And I know we didn't have time, but also you can talk about food chains and food pyramids and all kinds of stuff in your environmental education part of your field trip. And you can also measure the site physically with Jean's hodometer or just a measuring tape, and then correlate that with your classroom learning on Google Earth Maps. So,
okay, this is a picture of students participating in the food chain food web. There is a link to that as well. Another station that we talk about for rotation in the field is the Bluebird Trail. This is habitat restoration. Bluebirds were there at the time Fort Roberdeau was built. Bluebirds nest in old growth trees that have hollows in them. So at Fort Roberdeau, we don't have big old growth trees, but we do have artificial trees, artificial nest box that they are able to live in. So you can see here a picture, it's really neat. You can open the nest box and see the eggs. The female bluebird, is not flustered by that. They've become used to people. But the Bluebird Trail is not only educational, but it is a form of habitat restoration that the students have an opportunity to see on site.
that's Dr. Stan Katala, the leader in that picture, and he is the one that established and maintains the Bluebird Trail at Fort Roberdeau, and we have quite the bluebird population.
Yeah. Okay, so what happens when the kids are done in the field? Well, we get them back into the classroom, and this is an opportunity to have them identify, synthesize, and evaluate their experience. What we've done in the past is have the kids, they've gathered all this information. They've gathered all this information from the classroom lessons, research, and they create a poster that they're able to use not only to teach other classes about the experience, about the habitat restoration and invasive species. And they have the opportunity then to come to St. Francis and participate in the Watershed Festival, showing the research that they've done and the poster products that they have developed. And another extension for English language arts would be to have the students write a press release or an article for the school end of the year report or the school paper. And it's important, they've had their education, they've taken all that field experience, classroom experience, are able to combine it into a cohesive product that shows that they've been able to identify a local environmental issue and actually take action to improve that, in this instance, a historic site. So it's a great opportunity. It takes them from the classroom to the field, back into the classroom, and to have them process all this information and put it out in a very cohesive, it's a good way to check for understanding the type of products that they produce. But it's a great overall experience, realizing that it's difficult having to stay in scope and sequence with content, but even in a small way, you can take this and bring it down to a more manageable site experience for your students. Okay. So do we want to do questions? Okay, here's your question, the poll. How does planting a tree help to mitigate climate change? Trees reduce the impact of severe flooding and storms. Trees absorb greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Trees support biodiversity, or all of the above. Okay. All right. Okay. What's interesting is the answer I had picked for this one was trees absorb greenhouse gases like carbon from the atmosphere. And Jody, we kind of had back and forth about that. Jody suggested that.
Well, trees do impact the severe flooding. A mature tree can soak up 400 gallons from floodwater. They help to hold in the soil so that all that soil doesn't go into a creek and ruin it. Trees support biodiversity. Yeah, you saw that in the food web game, that a simple hackberry tree, I didn't even know what a hackberry tree was, but it supports all this life at Fort Roberdeau.
So your answer is all of the above would be appropriate here.
Or any one of those answers.
Right, it would be appropriate. Okay, next question.
How do invasive plants affect the Chesapeake Bay? Invasive species decrease habitat. Invasive species increase biodiversity. Invasive species support agriculture, or all of the above.
All right, excellent. You got it entirely right. Decrease habitat and decrease biodiversity, and definitely does not support agriculture. And the third question, okay, how do school community partnerships like the Weed Warriors of Fort Roberdeau provide meaningful watershed educational experiences for students? Okay, the partnerships outdoor experiences used to identify and investigate a locally relevant environmental issue. The partnership provides the students with an opportunity to share knowledge and gained with their community. And the partnership engages students in meaningful and informed actions to address local environmental issues, or all of the above. Okay, excellent. Meaningful watershed educational experiences are provided in this entire program. Okay. All right, now, here are a few of the resources that you have access to. You will notice that we have our email addresses, Jody's and mine, the Arbor Day Foundation and Keystone 10 Million Trees Partnership. There are some neat things here. A nice free handout, or actually a pamphlet, Common Trees of Pennsylvania. That is an active link that you can print out to use in your classroom. Okay, and BioBullies. This is really an awesome curriculum. I'd recommend that you print it up. BioBullies, an invasive species curriculum supplement for Pennsylvania schools. And we've used this with our Chesapeake Bay workshops in the past. We've got a lot more available for you. And if you just want to email us and get in touch with us, we are more than willing to share our expertise with you and your classes.
And Jean, I think you did a bangarang job of getting out that resource list.
Thank you. And that's just a small amount of resources we could help you with. So any questions? I think we're right at the end.
Yeah, good. We're doing well.
Do you want to wrap it up, Michael?
And well, just one quick thing. I really think that this program will help develop environmentally literate and environmentally active citizens, which is the ultimate goal through a lot of hands-on activities.
Right.
All right, I'm done.
Me too. Michael?
All right, so thank you very much for attending today. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and we thank you for attending today.